So, hi everyone, I'm RG, and I'm going to be talking about sovereign scale-free reputation systems. So we're starting with the assumption that reputation systems, the way they're built today, are broken. And so Repo is the first sovereign reputation rollup on Celestia. And what we're building is a way for a way to incentivize building reputation models in a verifiable and customizable manner at scale. So before I dive into kind of how we do that, I want to talk about what do we mean by reputation systems. So reputation systems are tools, applications, or products that that users use to mitigate risk or delegate trust. So in the world today, in the last 20 years, we've seen Google, Trustpilot, and Yelp, and some of these reputation systems are quite popular. And then all these reputation systems actually have a reputation model underneath, which essentially you can look at that as an algorithm or a set of algorithms that interpret data, but they do have a human in the loop. So a human in the loop is kind of making those choices about how the reputation models are built and what the weights are to decide how the system is created. And so this is the current state of reputation kind of models and systems. One reputation model maps to one reputation system, and you have the way they're usually built are black box, prone to abuse. One of the Reddit articles I came across said that 44% of Amazon reviews are actually fake. People run review farms in different parts of the world. And so it's quite a problem, especially knowing that people make a lot of spending decisions based on these rating and review systems. And finally, they're built in a centralized manner. And so the world that we imagine with Repo is a world where you have plug-and-play reputation models that power reputation systems. I'll talk about the architecture of the Repo protocol, but essentially the way the Repo models are built, they're verifiable on chain. They have co-ownership primitives using things like the story protocol. And there's also rev share with data owners, just the way we build the Repo data lake in which the Repo modelers are accessing the data set, the data and the data set needed to build the Repo models. And so before I dive into the architecture as well, I think this slide is from the research day from last month in New York, where Chris Ghost from Onoma presented this in the context of scale-free money. But if taking this in the context of scale-free reputation systems, we currently have a bunch of reputation systems that are generalized, and then we have very niche reputation systems that are based on word of mouth or second or third degree connections. And not everyone is privileged enough to have those reputation systems around them. And so a world that we are imagining with Repo models and scale-free risk and reputation systems is the one that looks closer to on your right-hand side, where you have different loci serving relevance based on context. And so here's an overview of what the Repo protocol looks like. We're building, as I mentioned, a sovereign rollup on Celestia, where you have the Repo chain acts as the execution layer and the incentive layer. And on top of that, you have the Repo model repository, which, you can just look at that as a model marketplace. And on top of that, people build what we call reputation apps, but just dApps, or reputation systems. So here are some examples of reputation systems that have been built and that we are building currently. And so the Repo, just like Repo models, the protocol itself is very modular. We use a bunch of interrupts and built in a very distributed manner. But yeah, and so this is not exhaustive. These are just like initial interrupts that we've explored. But we're still kind of open to seeing what else can we do. The most recent one, which is not mentioned here, actually, is we're looking at Onoma to source intents to see what modelers can, how do modelers know what to model. So that's kind of been quite interesting for us. So in terms of scope, Repo is designed as an open infrastructure to build risk and reputation models. We're starting with DPINs. DPINs have a very specific problem called DPIN verification, where you're trying to match SLAs for the data clients or for clients in general. And so we're starting there, and then we'll be going at AI agents, looking at how AI agents kind of understand real-world context and kind of understand things that LLMs cannot do, because LLMs are mostly finding patterns in language, but we think that you need more than language to understand, to make AI systems smart enough to understand context. And then, yeah, as I've talked before, repo is also the repository layer and the collaboration layer. So for the last two, you can think of these as Hugging Face, but more incentivized in a Web3 manner. And as the reputation roll up, we're stakeholder specific and sector agnostic. So what I mean by that is the repo protocol itself allows customization for any stakeholder. So let's say if you're an investor, you can customize the models for your needs, versus if you're a data client, you can customize the reputation models for your context. And sector agnostic means that we're not starting with like a specific sector. So that means like DeFi or depends, like the way the architecture is designed, it can be used for many different applications within Web3 and even Web2. And so here are some examples of reputation systems that we've built for using the repo protocol. And so once the repo protocol is up, we just launched our DevNet. The possibilities are really endless. I think one of the interesting things that we've seen is that you have like these generalist reputation systems that take the average of the sum approach to kind of give you outputs. But we think that with repo and repo models, you can create context-specific and niche reputation models. So without further ado, talking about what repo is, I would like to invite Ruben, who's the founder and founding GP for Protocol Labs Capital, who's one of our first users for the repo protocol, to kind of give you a context of how Architect.Systems has used repo and repo models to kind of solve their use case. So, hi Ruben.
Can I sit here?
Yeah, of course.
Hey guys.
So, just a bit more context. I have an intro for Ruben. Ruben has been involved in ecosystem building for many years. He's, as I mentioned, one of the founding GPs for Protocol Labs Capital. His work has contributed to deploying more than $10 billion in portcos at Protocol Labs. So yeah, super excited to have you here, Ruben. Let's start with the first question. What excites you about repo?
What excites me about repo? So first of all, thank you. That's a great intro. What excites me about repo? So what you guys do, you and your team, RJ, is you build those context-specific models that we as users and as investors can use to then build reputation systems that cater to a very specific use case, and we can then use them to fit them to purpose, right? So what the investment process kind of looks like is we want to evaluate an opportunity extremely quickly, and ideally you want to tap into additional rigor and into additional models very quickly. What you guys tend to do is you accelerate our speed to decision making, if you want to, as we can with very little effort tap into one of your models, make it into a reputation system for whatever deepen we want to invest into, and then we get to decisions quicker.
Yeah, that's super exciting. So can you tell us a bit more about, let's say in a world that repo does not exist, what would your process look like?
Yeah, there was a time when repo didn't exist. I wouldn't describe it as a grim world, but you take a lot of load off us, right? So while we use your reputation systems to make better decisions, we also use it to make faster decisions. What repo allows us to do, or in a world without repo, what we would need to do is we would need to engage, orchestrate, and likely also project manage the modelers ourselves. We would then not just need to adapt the model to fit for purpose, but we would actually need to orchestrate that community. And hence that would divert resources away from what I think we do best, which is identifying investment opportunities and spending time with founders.
Okay, that's really cool. And I remember, we've talked about this a lot since we met in Berlin. And I think one of the things that Ruben asked me was, why are we building on Celestia?
Yeah, why are you building on Celestia?
Yeah, so for us, I think, when we were starting out, we considered many different options. We considered IPC, I was at Filecoin for many years. And we also considered, of course, Ethereum and Solana. I think 3 reasons. I think Celestia, the first reason is Celestia allows us to not think about infrastructure on a day-to-day basis. We just want to be this incentive layer for risk and reputation modeling. And so I think we were able to spin up a DevNet within a month and a half. And just the interoperability in terms of like choosing our own settlement layer and whatnot allows us to like really focus on the tokenomics and crypto economics of what it would need to incentivize modelers to come on the repo network. I think the other one is this one is interesting. So we look at repo as this very much like the Hindenburg research approach, where we think that modelers on repo are incentivized to find non-obvious insights and actually call out networks that might be in DeFi or DePIN. We actually just posted a model for the Demo network, which models carbon emissions. And so the question that we're asking is that, okay, a decentralized way to gather vehicle data, is awesome, but does that come at a cost for carbon emissions, right? And this is an interesting question, right? So because we talk about DePINs as this amazing thing that happens, but does it come at a cost, right? And so those are the kind of questions that we're interested in. So you actually go to repo.xyz, you can find that model, you can find the app, and you can also find the underlying model that allows you to play with the model. And so those are the kind of things. And so how that plays into Celestia is that we can be we don't have to be on Ethereum or Solana and be impacted by the price action of what might result from the information. We can just focus on still kind of being this calling out network. And so I think from that perspective, really leveraging Celestia's lazy chain approach, where we can kind of be this third party. And then finally, I think we think that the modular ecosystem really plays into how repo models are designed. They're plug and play, modular in approach. So those are the reasons why Celestia is the best chain for us.
Cool. And then I guess in my double hat as both an investor and as a user of repo, how will this get big?
Yeah, so this is a great question, right? I think a lot of the times when I go talk to investors, talk to people, they're like, okay, reputation systems are cool. I think a lot of the times people kind of not confused, but they just put reputation systems and identities, decentralized identity in the same bucket. But reputation systems are for me, the way this gets big is because at the end of the day, there's nothing like trustlessness. I think we just confuse this notion of verifiability with trustlessness. If a system is verifiable, we try to call it trustless. Of course, we're all working towards progressive trustlessness, but the idea of trust has subjectivity and embedded into it, right? And so our notion is that as more and more protocols try to actually find users and try to find use cases, they will start to have to care about SLAs and some of these things that, the boring things that Web 2 has to care about. And so to that extent, I look at this as a trilemma. I think there's the blockchain trilemma, right, of scalability, decentralization, and then there's another, I call it the DePIN trilemma, but this is relevant to other networks as well, which is decentralization, scalability, and quality. And so I think when you start to think about quality, I think risk and reputation systems start to become really important. And so then the question becomes, who is designing these risk and reputation systems? So there might be another protocol that's coming up with their own benchmarking mechanisms, but then eventually the community will ask, well, who's coming up with these benchmarking mechanisms? The repo protocol allows you to actually include your community in the system design process. And so that's really important. And finally, when you talk about governance, right now the way the governance systems work is it's mostly happening on GitHub. I mean, you have some protocols like Claros and whatnot that are trying to make it a bit better. But at the end of the day, you don't have you're still working with native incentives in the governance system. So we look at repo as kind of having, a third-party incentives layer that other protocols can leverage to invite, smart people in the governance process. So those are some of the reasons. And I think those 3 reasons, I think, is how reputation systems and like repo gets big.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
One question, and obviously, because you were describing that the traditional reputation systems in Web 2, people have their bot farms which they're running to basically boost reviews. Like how can I use repo to sort of basically solve for that problem?
So can you repeat the first part?
So obviously we have bot farms, and even in Web 3 we have Sybil, people with a bunch of wallets sibling any sort of reputation system. How can you, with repo, sort of prevent that from happening?
Right. So I think the idea of reputation systems right now is very reactive. I think the repo protocol allows it to be proactive. So I'm not going to prevent that. It's like a cat and mouse problem, right? But if you are a protocol and you want to engage, first of all, the approach that repo is taking is we're not partnering with protocols, right? As we're not the gauntlet of the world. We are saying that, hey, modelers on the repo network have an incentive to find kind of risk within other protocols, right? And so to that extent, if there's a protocol that is more prone to bot farms, then modelers on the repo network will have an incentive to build a repo model, right? And then maybe publish a report or call it out. And that's kind of how we see it. It's not like, I will be going, there is a world in which we can reach out to the foundations, right? So that's how we see it.
Okay, so obviously, I don't know if you saw how layer 0 was sort of identifying the Sybil wallets for the airdrop. Is that something that you can do through repo? Basically, you can spin up a model to basically ping all these wallets. So that's sort of the goal of it?
Yes, so that would be the goal. And the interesting thing here is that the easiest way to build that model would be actually getting historical data about layer 0 wallets and all those things. I think the interesting thing about repo is how you combine on-chain and off-chain data. So in the demo case, what we did was we actually took on-chain data about vehicles, and then we took off-chain data from the Environmental Protection Agency, and we combined those 2 data sets because the demo network does not capture emissions data, right? Because they have no incentive to. And so similarly, in this use case, I can't think of what the off-chain data would be right away, but I think you can come up with off-chain mechanisms or multiple on-chain mechanisms that are non-obvious. And so that's how we think about it. And at the end of the day, it's predictive in nature, which is, I think, better than something absolute. So.
Got it. That's good. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cool.